So today we're going to talk about how you can take the basic things we learned about with the lean dough and switch it over to be a rich dough. So the changing the things in black, the lean dough into rich dough. Lean doughs are low in fat, rich are very high in fat. So we're going to add some fat to our recipe. For our water, for example, instead of using water, we can either use warm milk. We don't want it to be cold because we want to actually get the yeast to get started, so we could zap it in the microwave for a minute. Or if I want to use just warm water again, I can just add in a third of a cup or more of powdered milk. That will make it into and give me a little bit more of that milk protein. Or I can use canned milk that is at room temperature. But like I said, I don't want it to be cold, but I can go ahead and add those in. Instead of just a tablespoon of sugar, I'm actually going to use a third of a cup of sugar, which is honestly a little over 5 times more sugar. So I'm adding a little bit more sugar, but I just like that sweetness, and it's going to make my yeast be very happy. My yeast stays the same. I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of butter, so I'm quadrupling the butter, and I can either use butter or any kind of fat. So 4 tablespoons is the equivalent of a fourth of a cup. I'm going to keep my salt the same, and then I'm also going to add 1 egg, which is optional. I don't have to do if I want to. Whenever you put an egg in, it is now called a sweet dough. You would think it's because of sugar, but honestly it's not. It's because of the egg that's called a sweet dough. And then I'm going to still put in my 2 to 3 cups of flour, but this time my dough is going to be sticky, and I'm not going to knead it. I'm just going to pull it together until it's a nice soft dough. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you how this all goes together. It's very similar to what we did the other day. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use hot water or warm water, and then I'm going to add powdered milk. You should have some of that left in the kit if you still have that. As I said, you can put at least a third a cup because that will make it turn this into milk rather than just water. It adds the extra protein and this is non-fat milk, so it doesn't really add fat to it, but it adds a richness to it that works really well. I'm also going to add, at this point, I add my third of a cup of sugar, and I want that sugar so that, as we know, you make the yeast happy, because yeast just really likes to function in that way. Once we have got that in, we're going to go ahead and put our tablespoon of yeast. I'm going to sprinkle that over the top. I want that so that it starts to work. Again, you don't want it over 130 degrees because that will kill your yeast. You don't want that to happen. Once I have done that, I am going to actually take my butter. If you are afraid that your butter might have gotten too hot if you melted it, you can put it in just soft butter. I actually melted it. If you're afraid of it being too warm, you can pour it down the side of your bowl because the bowl is cold, and the temperature will then go into the bowl and make it so it's not too hot, and I won't kill my yeast. So if by chance you're at all worried about your butter being too warm, just go ahead and pour it down the side of your bowl. And by doing that, it just, like I said, the bowl will absorb some of the temperature so that you don't overheat your yeast. Once I've done that, I go ahead and put in my teaspoon of salt, and then this is also one of those recipes that I can alter and add other things into it, but I am going to go ahead and put my egg in. I think that just adds, as I said, it turns it into a sweet dough, and makes it just has a little bit more tenderness to it. It makes a more cakey texture. Then what I'm going to do is go ahead and add my once I've got this all done, it looks very different than it did the other day. It's much more yellow. And this is going to be a lighter kind of a dough. As far as what I mean by lighter, it's going to rise more quickly because it has all that sugar that's going to help the yeast. I'm again going to put my flour in a half a cup at a time until it comes together. But this time I'm not going to knead it. Or if I do knead it, it's just enough to just make it a smooth dough in my bowl. I don't want to, I'm just going to treat it very carefully because I want that structure to be soft. I don't want it to be stretchy and chewy. I want it to be, like I said, I keep saying like cakey, and that's probably the best way to think about it. Now I can use a rich dough for anything that I would use for the lean dough, so I can make the different types of rolls and other kinds of things, but I can also use it for cinnamon rolls. The cinnamon rolls are very easy to do. That what I do is basically roll it out into a rectangle about the size of a piece of paper, and then I brush it with butter until, with melted butter until it is wet, and I can actually see the pieces of wet dough on it, and then I add cinnamon and sugar until it looks dry, so melted butter until it is wet, which always looks like way more than you think. I'm going to put cinnamon and sugar. It's the same mixture that I made for the cinnamon rolls, cinnamon knots that I made before. So it's 1 cup of sugar and a tablespoon of cinnamon, and I'm just about where I want it. So like I said, I want it to be a smooth dough, and it's going to be sticky, but that's okay. I want this dough to have a stickiness to it, so that it's going to be, and then I'm just going to adjust maybe just a little bit more. So again, this is going to take more towards the 3 cups because I've got those extra things that cause liquid ingredients, but as I said, I'm not going to need it. I'm just going to make it a nice soft dough, smoother than my biscuits, but just once it's all mixed in and nice and soft, I am going to actually leave this and sit. I want it to be refrigerated for at least an hour, and what will happen is this dough, it looks very sticky, but it's more like your muffin dough that you made. And what I'm going to do is let this sit, and I'm going to let it go overnight, and then when I come back, or at least, like I said, at least an hour, and then once I come back, all of that stickiness, because if you notice, it doesn't stick to my hands. It looks sticky, but it's not very sticky. And I want it so that it looks sticky but doesn't feel sticky, which may sound like a strange kind of thing. So I'm going to cover this, allow this to rest for at least an hour, and then when I come back, I will be able to form this into a cinnamon roll or other doughs. And so you use it the same way you did other other doughs. Once it sits, I'm going to roll it out and put my butter, my cinnamon sugar, or just make it into regular roll rolls, and use this recipe when I want something more rich and something that I want that extra fat and tenderness.